Hi, it's Leah here, and today is World Autism Awareness Day. So I wanted to come on and talk to you a little bit about my experience with autism. Um, I don't know how many of you already know this, but I was diagnosed as autistic last year at the age of 43. So I'd lived a huge amount of my life without ever knowing actually that I had autism or ADHD. Um, and that's been a huge thing. So I wanted to come on and talk a little bit just in honour of Autism Awareness Day. The trouble is, though, is that these kinds of videos, I always feel a little pressure to have some kind of amazing points, some kind of sage advice. And I don't know if I really do for this. I don't know, there's so many things that I could talk about. I didn't really know what to focus on. So I thought I might just talk a little bit about what autism is, talk a little bit about what's going on at the moment, and maybe anything else I think of while I'm talking. So hopefully it'll be interesting and worth listening to. So I am going to read this out. So what is autism? Having autism spectrum condition means that the person has a different way of understanding other people and the world around them. ASC is a lifelong developmental disorder, not an illness or disease, so there's no cure, but there are many ways that the difficulties can be managed. So basically what that means is that somebody who's autistic has a variation in the way that their brain functions. We're all slightly different, aren't we? We all have different strengths and weaknesses. And autism is a different way of approaching the world, I suppose. And that means that particularly in the way that our modern world is set up, somebody who's autistic can have certain difficulties operating within the world. So for instance, many people with autism have problems filtering information. Okay, so if you imagine when you're sat in a room somewhere, there is, billions of bits of information coming at you. So whether that's, information about, colours, shapes, what the light's doing, sounds, smells, and the list goes on. All that information's coming into your brain. And for most people, the brain can filter out all the unimportant information so that the really significant things, so if you're, say, focusing on what somebody's saying to you, for instance, the brain will kind of filter out extraneous information so that you're consciously only aware of the stuff in front of you. Whereas somebody with autism will tend to have not such a good filter system. So that means that instead of being able to focus on that person in front of them and what they're saying, actually they're getting all sorts of information. If there's a leaf blowing in the wind outside the window, that movement will be very distracting. If there's something kind of scratchy on clothing, that will be very distracting too. But equally, sensory issues can go the other way. So might be something that's particularly very soothing, a soft feeling, or some autistic people like kind of vibratory feelings. And we'll often use sensory input to calm our mind. So I'm doing this, you can't see, something like this, or I've got a thing with my hair, I tend to do this, or I pull it across my mouth. I'm trying not to do that at the moment with COVID. Communication and social stuff. People with autism tend to be quite straightforward, quite honest and real. So that can cause a lot of confusion for them because I'm saying them, us, because we go into complex social situations and we don't understand the stuff that's going on between the lines. We don't understand the complex things that are going on, but also because we don't tend to be deceitful or manipulative, we tend to be fairly straightforward. Actually, when people are, we don't get it. We assume that they're being truthful and we can't see through that. We tend to have very strong focuses on certain either topics of interests or areas of interest, which is fantastic because what that means is we become very quickly experts in certain things. But if we're not interested in something, it's really hard for us to bring our attention over to it. awkwardness, difficulty with eye contact. I mean, over the years, I've learned to have eye contact, but I find it almost painful. If someone's holding my gaze for a while, it's, I can't cope with it. I need to move away. And particularly if I'm thinking, when you're interacting with me directly, face to face, you'll notice that if we're talking about something quite complex, I'll have to look away in order to process that information and come back to you. Because if I'm dealing with the direct gaze that you have, that input, again, it's that input, isn't it? That filter. I can't concentrate on the thought process that I need to have, so I need to look away to have that thought process. And I'm not too, I don't struggle as much as some people do. So eye contact can be a real problem. Difficulty seeing things from other people's point of view and social imagination. So being able to kind of have make-believe. I never really was very good at make-believe. I've never wanted to play kind of dolls, and pretending that they were something that they weren't. I just didn't get any pleasure from that at all. But also kind of working out how things are going to be. So sometimes with, like at the moment, I'm trying to plan a couple of different courses. So to help people with stress and anxiety, and also a special one at the moment for stopping smoking, sort of doing an online version of it, and visualising what that's going to be like, how that's going to pan out is really, really difficult for me. And I know that's the same for lots of autistic people. If you're going into somewhere new, be able to kind of work out what that's going to be like, what you're going to need. And there's a real thing about kind of not knowing that things are going to be different to now. So, we know, but it's hard to do that. So, for instance, if I feel warm now, I might not think to take a coat with me when I go out because it's warm. So the thought of, it might not be warm in a minute is really hard to do. And I find that a lot with money management, actually. If there's money in my bank now, I find it really hard to process, and, have to. I've learned to try, and I get my partner to help me actually a lot of the time. But kind of knowing that money might not be there because it's committed to bills that are going out tomorrow or next month, whatever. And most people who are autistic benefit from routines. So when things are kind of the same and predictable, it kind of takes away a lot of the kind of anxiety, because a lot of the time we are running so many extra processes trying to do the same things as other people, because it's not automatic for us. It's not something that we naturally understand. So even, for instance, socially, we're having to think everything kind of consciously. So if you think about when you first learnt to drive, assuming you do drive, at first it was literally driving along going kind of, mirror, signal, manoeuvre. You had to think consciously about everything you were doing, and it's really, really hard. Once you become kind of, accomplished at driving, then that becomes easier because you just do it automatically. And that's the difference, and it becomes really exhausting. So most autistic people need lots of rest. I'm just looking at the time, so I don't want to go on too long. I'm going on for quite a while. Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful to people, but if you do know anybody with ASC, know that you are interacting with somebody who is pretty amazing, somebody who has a way of seeing things in a different way to your average person, someone who can spot little details in a way that somebody who isn't autistic can't, and who has the most loyal, honest, straightforward way of interacting with you and the world. And that might mean that some of the social niceties get forgotten, there might be a little bit of bluntness, but you can be sure that somebody who is autistic that is being blunt about something has no negative intention. They are just saying it as they see it to be. So be grateful for your autistic employees, partners, children. See what's fantastic in them, and let's celebrate all being different and living and interacting with the world in the way that suits us best. Anyway, hope you have a fantastic day. I'm going to go because I feel like this video's been way too long, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.